The day my husband said those words to my mother, something inside me broke in a way I didn't know was possible. The cottage you gifted, I gave it to my sister. Your stupid daughter didn't deserve it. He didn't even hesitate. He didn't lower his voice. He stood in my mother's living room, chin raised, like he was announcing something noble instead of confessing betrayal. And in that moment, I realized I had been married to a stranger. Let me take you back to the beginning, because nothing this cruel ever starts with shouting. It starts with small dismissals, small compromises, small moments where you tell yourself, it's not that bad. My mother gifted us that cottage 3 years ago. It wasn't just property, it was her dream. She had worked 35 years as a schoolteacher, saving slowly, skipping vacations, wearing the same winter coat for a decade. When my father passed, she sold their apartment and downsized to a small flat so she could help me start my married life with stability. I want you to always have a place that's yours, she had said when she handed me the documents. No matter what happens. The cottage was small but beautiful. 2 bedrooms, a white wooden porch, apple trees in the yard. It smelled like fresh paint and possibility. I cried the first time I stepped inside. My husband smiled then. He hugged my mother. He called her generous. I didn't know that gratitude was temporary. At first, things were fine. We moved in. We decorated. I planted flowers along the walkway. He set up a barbecue grill and invited his friends over every weekend. I told myself that sharing was love. But slowly, something shifted. He started calling it his cottage. He said things like, my sister needs help more than we do. Or, family comes first. I would remind him gently, this was my mother's gift to us. He'd roll his eyes. This means me too. His sister had always been dependent. She drifted from job to job. She made impulsive decisions. She dated men who drained her savings. And every time she fell, my husband ran to catch her. At first, I admired his loyalty. Then I began to notice that his loyalty never extended to me. One evening, I came home from work and found his sister sitting at our kitchen table. Suitcases by the door. She'll stay with us for a while, he said casually. How long is a while? I asked. He shrugged. Until she figures things out. A week turned into a month. A month turned into 6. She took over the guest room. Then she began rearranging the kitchen. Then she started criticizing how I kept the house. You're too controlling, she once said, laughing. No wonder my brother gets stressed. My husband didn't defend me. He laughed too. The tension grew thicker each day. I felt like a guest in my own home. When I suggested that his sister look for her own place, he snapped. She doesn't have anyone else. And I do, I whispered. He didn't answer. The real shock came on a cold Tuesday afternoon. I arrived home early from work. The driveway was empty. The house was silent. Too silent. The locks had been changed. I stood there for 10 minutes thinking it was a mistake. Thinking maybe I was at the wrong house. Maybe I was losing my mind. Then his sister opened the door. Oh, she said flatly. You're back. What's going on? I asked, heart pounding. She stepped aside reluctantly. Inside, half my things were gone. My clothes. My books. The photo albums from my childhood. I called my husband immediately. He didn't sound guilty. He sounded irritated. You're overreacting. Why were the locks changed? Because we needed clarity. Clarity about what? About who actually deserves to live there. That night, I went to my mother's apartment and cried like I was 5 years old again. She listened quietly. She didn't interrupt. She didn't say, I told you so. The next day, she asked to speak to him. I begged her not to. I was embarrassed, humiliated. I still clung to the hope that this was temporary madness. But she insisted, so we went to the cottage together. He opened the door, annoyed to see both of us. My mother stayed calm. I just want to understand what's happening. And that's when he said it. The cottage you gifted, I gave it to my sister. Your stupid daughter didn't deserve it. The air froze. I watched my mother's face carefully. I expected anger. I expected shouting. Instead, she looked tired. She reached into her purse and calmly pulled out a folder. You gave something that was never yours to give, she said softly. He laughed. What are you talking about? The house is in our name. She slid the papers onto the table. No, she corrected him. It's in my name. Silence. 3 years ago, when she transferred the property, she had done something I hadn't known about. She kept legal ownership and registered me as the sole future beneficiary. My husband's name was never on the title. Not even once. His face drained of color. That's impossible, he muttered. You never checked, my mother asked gently. He grabbed the documents, flipping through them frantically. It was always meant to protect my daughter, she continued. Not to fund your sister's lifestyle. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked small. He tried to argue. He tried to threaten legal action. But the papers were airtight. Within a week, his sister packed her bags. Within a month, he moved out too. He begged me to reconsider. He said he had acted out of stress. That he felt pressured to help his sister. That he didn't mean what he said about me not deserving it. But some words cannot be unsaid. Some lines cannot be uncrossed. The worst part wasn't the attempted theft. It wasn't the changed locks. It was the casual cruelty in his voice when he called me undeserving. As if my worth was something he could measure. As if the years I spent supporting him meant nothing. I filed for divorce 2 months later. He tried to claim emotional investment in the property. Tried to argue that he had contributed to renovations. But legally, he had no claim. Emotionally, he had burned every bridge. The day the papers were finalized, I went back to the cottage alone. It felt different, quieter, like it had exhaled. I walked through each room slowly. The kitchen where I once felt criticized. The porch where I used to drink coffee at sunrise. The apple trees in the yard, still standing, still blooming despite everything. I realized something important that day. The cottage was never just about bricks and wood. It was about boundaries. My mother had given me more than a house. She had given me protection. She had given me independence. And she had shown me something else too. Love doesn't scream. Love doesn't belittle. Love doesn't take what isn't offered. Real love protects. A year has passed now. The cottage is truly mine in every sense. I repainted the walls soft blue. I planted new flowers. I turned the second bedroom into a small reading studio. I host friends on weekends. Laughter fills the rooms again. My mother visits often. We sit on the porch and drink tea. Sometimes she apologizes for not telling me about the ownership details sooner. I always shake my head. You saved me, I tell her. And it's true. If the house had been in our joint names, my story might have ended very differently. Instead, it became a lesson. A painful one, but a powerful one. I learned that partnership requires respect. I learned that generosity without boundaries invites exploitation. And I learned that anyone who tries to convince you that you don't deserve what is yours has already disqualified themselves from your life. As for my ex-husband, he moved into a small apartment with his sister. Last I heard, they're still figuring things out. I no longer feel anger when I think about him. Only clarity, because in trying to take my home, he revealed his true character. And sometimes, the greatest gift someone can give you, is showing you exactly who they are. If this story taught me anything, it's this. Never underestimate the quiet strength of a mother who wants to protect her child. And never let anyone convince you that you don't deserve the life that was built for you. Because the right people will never need to take it away to feel powerful. They'll stand beside you in it. When I thought everything was over, when the divorce papers were signed and the silence had finally settled into something peaceful, I believed that was the end of the story. I was wrong. Because part 2 wasn't about courtrooms or property. It was about consequences. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I received a message from an unknown number. I need to talk. It's important. I knew immediately who it was. I didn't answer. Not at first. I had worked too hard to rebuild my calm. The cottage had become my sanctuary again. The walls were freshly painted. The garden was blooming stronger than ever. I had replaced every bitter memory with something new. Soft curtains, warm lighting, framed photos of happier days. But the message came again. It's about the house. That made me pause. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet in a public cafe. Neutral ground. No emotions tied to furniture or door frames. When he walked in, he looked different. Not broken, just diminished. There's a certain look people have when pride finally abandons them. He sat across from me, hands clasped tightly. She lost it, he said without greeting. Lost what? I asked calmly. The apartment. The one I rented for us. I waited. She couldn't keep a job. Bills piled up. I covered everything. Then I couldn't. The irony hung thick in the air. The man who once claimed I didn't deserve a cottage was now struggling to maintain a 2-bedroom rental. I didn't come to ask for money, he said quickly, as if reading my thoughts. I came to ask for something else. Here it was. I want to come back. The words didn't sting. They didn't shake me. They just sounded outdated. As what? I asked. He blinked. As your husband. I almost smiled, not out of joy, but disbelief. You told my mother I didn't deserve the house, I reminded him. You changed the locks on me. I was under pressure. No, I said softly. You were honest. That's what people don't understand about cruel moments. They aren't accidents. They're revelations. He leaned forward. I made a mistake. I thought blood loyalty meant sacrificing everything. I didn't realize I was sacrificing you. I studied him carefully. For years, I would have melted at that sentence. Years ago, I would have rushed to comfort him, to fix things, to rebuild. But growth changes the way apologies sound. Why now? I asked. He hesitated. My sister moved in with someone else. There it was. Not remorse. Displacement. He didn't miss me. He missed stability. You don't love me, I said calmly. You miss the life I created. Silence. And that silence told me everything. I stood up. I hope you figure things out, I said. But I'm no longer your solution. And I walked away without looking back. That night, I sat on my porch wrapped in a blanket, replaying the conversation. It didn't hurt the way I expected it to. Instead, it confirmed something powerful. I had changed. The woman who once cried on her mother's shoulder would have begged for reconciliation. The woman I had become understood the difference between loneliness and love. Weeks passed. Then something unexpected happened. A legal notice arrived. He was contesting the divorce settlement, claiming emotional damages, claiming that he had been manipulated by my mother's property arrangement. I stared at the document in disbelief. Manipulated? My mother had protected me. But he needed someone to blame. So I called my lawyer again. This time, I wasn't scared. I was prepared. In court, his argument fell apart quickly. The judge asked a simple question. Did you at any point verify ownership of the property before attempting to transfer control? He didn't answer directly, because the truth was humiliating. He had assumed entitlement, assumed authority, assumed control. The judge dismissed the claim within minutes. And as we walked out of the courtroom, something shifted permanently inside me. Not anger, not triumph, freedom, because I realized something deeper. This had never been about a cottage. It was about value. For years, I tied my worth to how well I supported others. How patient I was, how understanding, how accommodating. I thought endurance was strength. But endurance without boundaries is self-erasure. One evening, my mother came over with fresh bread and tea. We sat at the kitchen table where his sister once criticized my cooking. Do you regret it? She asked gently. Regret what? Marrying him. I thought about it carefully. Regret is tricky. It can trap you in the past. No, I said finally. Because I wouldn't be this version of myself without it. And that was true. Pain had refined me. It taught me how to read red flags instead of painting them green. It taught me that loyalty must be mutual. It taught me that love without respect is just dependency dressed in pretty words. Months later, something else surprising happened. I was invited to speak at a small local women's group about financial independence. Apparently, word of the legal situation had spread through mutual connections. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't a public speaker. But then I thought about how lost I felt when the locks were changed. How powerless. If sharing my story could prevent even one woman from feeling that way, it was worth it. So I stood in front of 20 strangers and told them everything. Not dramatically, not bitterly, just honestly. I spoke about property rights. About checking documentation. About never surrendering legal control without understanding consequences. But more than that, I spoke about emotional clarity. How someone handles power, I told them, reveals who they are. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one woman raised her hand. What if you still love them? She asked. I paused. Love isn't enough, I answered. Safety matters more. That night, driving back to the cottage, I felt proud in a way I hadn't before. Not because I had won, but because I had rebuilt. A year ago, I thought losing my marriage meant losing my identity. Instead, it forced me to find it. And here's the twist no one expects. 6 months after the court dismissal, I received another message. Not from him, from his sister. I'm sorry, it read. Just 2 words. I stared at them for a long time. I didn't respond immediately, but eventually, I wrote back something simple. I hope you find stability. That was all. Forgiveness doesn't always require reconciliation. Sometimes it's just releasing the weight. Today, the cottage stands stronger than ever. The apple trees produce more fruit than before. I renovated the porch last spring. Installed soft lights along the railing. It no longer feels like a battleground. It feels like a beginning. And recently, someone new entered my life. Not dramatically, not urgently. He's patient. He asks before assuming. He listens more than he speaks. The first time he visited the cottage, he stood at the doorway and said, "It feels peaceful here." I smiled. It wasn't always. He didn't ask for details. He simply said, "I'm glad it is now." That's the difference. No entitlement, no claiming, just appreciation. And for the first time, I understood something clearly. The right person doesn't try to take your foundation. They admire what you've built. If you've made it this far in my story, here's what I want you to remember. When someone tells you that you don't deserve what you have, they are revealing their insecurity, not your worth. When someone takes what isn't theirs, they expose their character, not your value. And when life strips away illusions, it isn't punishing you. It's protecting you. My husband once stood in my mother's living room and declared I didn't deserve the cottage. Today, I sit on that same porch stronger, wiser, and completely unshaken. Not because I fought harder, but because I finally stopped fighting for someone who wasn't fighting for me. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can do.